So as I say, my name is LaFayette Stiff. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland in 1826, and my dad at the time worked for some newspapers up yonder. And naturally, whenever I got out of school and up yonder, I went to work with him. And later we moved down here in 1845 in Alabama, and we lived down here for a bit, moved to Gadsden, and then I got married, and me and my wife had 6 kids. That's a story for another time, later time, but got married, had kids, and wound up moving over here to Cherokee County. Now during all of this, me and my dad had a bunch of newspapers down here. He had the experience, as well as me, of being in Maryland, writing for some of the big newspapers up there, but he was very skilled, and he was very good down here. Nobody was able to write like he was. Now, a lot of people said that we stirred up trouble in this part of the country, but it's kind of what a good newspaper does. And around here, you got to tell the truth, because otherwise it'd lynch you. And we did the best we could. So we told the truth, made a couple people mad, but we was good at it, and we had a good time at it. But anyway, so moved over here close to Cherokee and moved to Center. And like I said, that was in 1844, and I created the first newspaper here in Center. And that was called the Coosa River Argus. Now, during all of this, there was no newspaper here. I come in and started. Now we've got a newspaper here. We got a bunch in Cedar Bluff and some in Gadsden. Now, Cedar Bluff probably had the most newspapers in this part of the country. After all this right here happened, I kept writing and enjoyed living here with me and my wife and my family down the road a bit. But during all this, the war of Northern Aggression started, and I decided that I was going to fight under the Confederacy. Even though I was born and raised for most of the time in Maryland, I wanted to stay down here and fight for what I believed was my country, being the Confederate States of America. So I joined the 6th Georgia Cavalry, fought with them for a bit, and whenever the war was over, you know, you would think, man, he was doing pretty good. He went out of the military as a captain, made it through the war. He had all these newspapers, wife and kids, had a good family. You'd think, you know, the story would be all hunky-dory, you know, from there, but that's not always the case. And I died in 1866, and I requested on my deathbed to be buried just over yonder, and they buried me in Garrett Cemetery. Now, I, being the kind of fellow that I was, I wanted to be buried standing up. Now, I want to be buried over yonder next to the Coosa. The reason for that is I want to watch all the steamboats go by. Now, every so often, we get a little bit restless. So I came back, and only reason I remember the year is because there was a newspaper I found kind of blowing around, and it was dated in 1923, and it said that Cherokee 3 had docked for the final time. That was the last steamboat over yonder, what it said. So that was kind of depressing. I was a little down and out about that for a bit. So I finally decided I ought to go and, I'd say, lay down, but go rest for a little bit. And I decided to go for another walk in the 60s, 1960s, and I forget what year it was. But anyway, I found another newspaper, and it said something about Wife's Dam. And then it mentioned something about Wife's Lake. No idea what Wife's Lake is. No idea what the Wife's Dam is. Couldn't tell you where it's at. But anyway, that stopped my Coosa from running through there, and that drove the last nail in the coffin for all the steamboats to go over yonder. Now, one thing I did while I was in the Alabama legislature, while I had all the newspapers, was I was a big proponent pushing to make the Coosa a navigable waterway from here all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, because that would have opened a lot of this up. But unfortunately, that never happened, and so I've been told is even in the 80s they kept talking about doing that and nothing ever become of it. So even almost 100 years later, still in the same mess that we were then. But I tried to do what I could back then, but every now and then I'll hear people walking about on top of me and they'll be saying, how come that he was buried over here next to Chief Pathkiller outside the cemetery? He wasn't an Injun. Why was he buried over here? Well, just wanted to watch the steamboats go by. Politicians took that away from me, and I was one of them, but I like to think I was one of the good ones. But y'all can run along. I'll quit jawing.